Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our 2025 HIC and Shelter Pit training. Our team wanted to start off with some reminders. Please enter your agency name into the chat box so that we can take attendance. Our team will try our best to answer all questions we receive during the Zoom meeting. For questions that we can't address, we'll go ahead and include those questions in our knowledge base articles. As well as for questions that require additional research, we will investigate and follow up with your agency, as well as including those questions in our knowledge base article. The training materials will be recorded and shared and be linked in our knowledge base article, as well as you'll also get a recap email with all the materials. Our team will cover the following topic in our training today: the HIC and Shelter Pit overview, the HIC data collection and demo, the Shelter Pit data collection. We will also have an overview of HMIS, HIC, and Shelter Pit reports and action items. And any time that we have left over, we'll have some time for Q&A. HIC and Shelter Pit is required by HUD to be collected on an annual basis. Every COC in the country is tasked to choose one night during the last 10 days of January to conduct this count. The HIC is the housing inventory count. The HIC collects information about all beds and units in each COC homeless system, categorized by project type. Projects included in the count are emergency shelter, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and other permanent housing. Only beds dedicated to serve homeless clients should be counted on the HIC. Shelter Pit is the point-in-time count. The pit provides a count of shelter and unsheltered homeless persons. The pit includes population data, such as number of households and persons, as well as subpopulation data, such as number of chronically homeless clients and clients with a mental illness. The shelter point-in-time count is a survey of client residing in an emergency shelter or a transitional housing project on the night of the count. All agencies are required to participate in the HIC and Shelter Pit reporting process, whether or not they participate in HMIS. HUD is requiring final updates to bed inventories to be completed in HMS prior to HIC and Shelter Pit submission. This is a newer requirement established in 2024, and your agency's support is crucial in ensuring the data submitted for the housing inventory count is accurate. This is our reporting timeline. So we started preparing for the 2025 HIC and Shelter Pit back in December. So I wanted to thank all the agencies that supported with reviewing and confirming their data. This will help streamline the reporting process. Today we have our HIC and Shelter Pit training. The night of the count will be January 27th, and we encourage agencies to review and complete all their data corrections and entry into HMS or comparable database by January 29th. Our HMS team will be sending out the drafted HIC form by February 3rd to all agencies and PIT data to HMS participating agencies. We will also be hosting office hours after the forms are sent out, so we encourage agencies to review their forms once they receive them to participate in office hours to ask us any questions you have about the review process on February 6th. During February 4th and 12th, agencies please review and make any corrections to the HIC and PIT data as needed. Your final form will be required to be submitted February 13th. The next timeline is that during February 14th to March 14th, our HMS team will review and work with agencies as needed to make any corrections to the data and HIC form. And from there, our HMS team will make updates in HMIS and upload the export into HDX, and March 26th we'll be sending out the final HIC form as well as the HDX export for your agency to review to finalize and compare the data. And then we're planning to submit roughly around March 28th. HIC form. Each agency will receive an email through HappyFox, our OCHMS help desk ticketing system. And in the email, you'll receive links to a form for each program that is included in the HIC. The 2025 HIC form will be drafted by the OC United Way 211 OC HMS team based on the data in HMS or from last year's HIC. The agency have sent agency setup information, which includes the project descriptor, funding, and bed inventory to both HMS and comparable databases to review. Changes have been requested to be submitted prior to January 27th so that the drafted HIC form will reflect those updates. The HIC form includes additional details to help with your review. Fields will appear or disappear from the form depending on how certain fields are answered. Our team added a few warnings for data that doesn't make sense to alert you to review that section over. In the next couple of slides, we'll be covering sections of the HIC form and providing some notes on each section. First section of the form is the project information. We are collecting general information about project, which includes the field listed, agency name, and project type. The funding source of the project is the next section. If there is no federal funding for the projects, please select no federal funding. If you do receive federal funding, we would be selecting federal funding. As mentioned, this form will be drafted by our team, so we're asking each agency to review to verify the information is accurate. There's also a section that lists participation status for agencies that participate in HMS. Your status would be HMS participation, and those partners who use comparable database, your status would be comparable database participation. Next, the second screenshot would be target population. The options are DV, HIV, or NA. A population is considered a target population if the project is designed to serve the population at least 75% of the clients fit that description. And the next section on the form will be inventory, housing type, and location. Please note that the location zip and geocode should match. If your agency project has current bed inventory, the next section will appear. You will have the bed inventory for each household type to then be filled out. It would include the 3 household type, which is at least 1 adult and 1 child, household without children, and household with only children. There is also dedicated beds. If your agency has any capacity for the dedicated beds, that information will also be included in the current bed inventory section. Heather?
Morning, everyone. So it's important to understand how to report beds and units. And so we'll start with family beds. You might have projects with a set number of units that you can fill where one unit is one family occupying that unit. But the household size may fluctuate, so it can be difficult to know how many beds to assign to the unit. So in this case, you'll determine the average family size of those families that are in the project and use that to determine beds. For HMIS projects, you can run the average family size report, and that's linked here, to determine the average family size for your project. Then that's calculated by taking the total number of enrollments in the year and dividing that by the number of households and determining an average. So once you have the average family size, multiply that by the number of units and you get the number of beds. So for example, a project has 5 units and it's one family per unit. After running the report, you find that the average size is 3. So the project will report 15 beds for 3 units for households with children. Next slide, please. So the next special area we wanted to review is permanent housing voucher projects. So for these projects, we're determining bed count based on the number of bedrooms that are in each unit, and we're considering each unit as one voucher. So for example, something like a studio apartment, which is 0 bedrooms, will be 1 bedroom for households without children. If it's a 1 bedroom, it would also count toward 1 bedroom, 1 bed for households without children. For households or at least 1 adult and 1 child, for 2 bedrooms, it would be you would account for 3 beds, and for 3 bedrooms, it would be 5 beds. So if you're reporting beds and units for at least 1 adult and 1 child, the number of vouchers should represent the 2 and 3 bedroom units. Next slide, please. For rapid rehousing projects, the beds and units should reflect clients active in the project and have a housing move-in date entered on or before the night of the count. So the beds would equal the number of clients in each household type, and the units would be the number of families in households with at least 1 adult and 1 child. For HMIS projects, we have a dashboard that provides this information, and that'll be covered by Andrew in a few slides. And next screen, please. There are some SSVF projects that are also providing EHA, which is Emergency Housing Assistance. So SSVF rapid rehousing projects will include active clients who are enrolled in a project and have a housing move-in date. However, there are clients who must be counted in a separate emergency shelter project not participating in HMIS who meet the following criteria. They're active on the night of the count, active in the project. They don't have a housing move-in date, and they are receiving EHA. This data can be pulled also from the HIC and Sheltered Pit data dashboard in Clarity, and again, we'll be covering that in a bit. Next slide, please. So the next section of the form is the pit count section. So it's for current inventory you reported, so only inventory that can be occupied. It's the number of active clients in each household type. For emergency shelter and transitional housing projects, these numbers must match the project's pit data. For rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and other permanent housing projects, the count includes only active clients in the project with a housing move-in date on or before the night of the HIC pit. Again, you can use that the HIC and Shelter Pit data dashboard to find this data. Next slide, please. So we wanted to provide this additional guidance on how the pit is determined. So for emergency shelters and transitional housing, the client must have an enrollment in the project with a project start date on or before the night of the HIC and an exit date that is either blank or it's after the night of the HIC. For emergency shelter night by night, it's similar, except it also has to have a bed night. The client has to have a bed night service on the night of the HIC. For rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and other permanent housing, the client has an enrollment in the project with a start date on or before the night of the HIC and an exit date that is blank or it's after the night of the HIC, and the client's head of household has a housing move-in date that is on or before the night of the HIC. Next slide, please. And finally, this next section is the bed utilization. So this section will only appear if your projects report current inventory. So it looks at total active clients divided by total bed inventory from the bed inventory section. So if utilization is below 65% or above 105%, you would need to provide an explanation as to why. So possible explanations for underutilized projects might be turnover in the new project, and the new household hasn't moved in yet, or there were no eligible clients on the night of the HIC pit. If the project was over 105%, it could be that there were babies active in the project that are not technically filling a bed because they were in a crib, and cribs are not counted as part of the bed inventory. Next slide, please. So a section related to bed inventory is the underdevelopment bed inventory. There are beds that can't be occupied by clients but are expected to be available in the next 12 months. For example, they might be under construction. Data collection is the same for the current inventory section. Next slide, please. And then if a project is a rapid rehousing project, this section will appear. For rapid rehousing projects, we report maximum capacity for the project. And so this says how many participants and households can be served during the funding year. That number should reflect either the contract goal or an internal goal that you're trying to meet. So for example, this project is to serve a total of 50 households within the grant year, and that's the data we're looking for to be entered for maximum capacity. If you don't have a contract but have an internal agency goal, that could be entered into this field. If you don't have any of that information, the HMIS help desk will work with you to determine the maximum household that is served in any given day to estimate your project's maximum capacity. Next slide, please. And finally, we get to the submission section. So there are a couple of things to note. As Elizabeth said, it will be drafted by the 2-on-1 team. So if you have changes to the form, we want to know what was changed and why. So it's helpful for us as we go through the process to finalize your form. So it should just be something like bed inventory was changed because, and just a simple reason. We do provide examples on the form of why data might be changed. The explanation doesn't need to be long. If you receive a form for a project that should not be reported for the HIC because it closed recently or something to that effect, you would want to put exclude, and then another box will appear that will allow you to provide an explanation. At the bottom of the form, there is a save button to save your form if you haven't finished it. Put in your email address and you'll receive an email with a link so you can complete the form. Or if you have finished it, there's a button that says submit to the HMIS help desk, and you can click that and it'll be sent to us. Next slide, please. So this is if you save your form and you don't send it, you'll get the little pop-up box, and then the box to the right is an example of an email that will be sent to you with the link. So you just click resume now to get back to your form to continue to edit it or review it. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. If, hold tight. Just a minute, please.
While Heather is getting the form ready, just want to take a quick pause to see if there's any questions. Feel free to unmute yourself or add your question to the chat.
Okay, I didn't hear any questions, so we'll go on. So I'm just verifying you can see the 2025 HIC form.
Yes, Heather, could you zoom in a little bit?
Yeah. Okay. So this is the form you'll be receiving. So we're using the same form as last year with just some updated text. Um, and as Elizabeth said, you'll be receiving a form for every emergency shelter, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and other permanent housing project. So one form per project. And a little bit about the form. So it's a smart form. So what's entered in the fields will determine whether other fields appear or not. And I'm just going to I am going to zoom out a minute and to kind of demonstrate, oops, not that much, and just demonstrate what that looks like. So I have a project type and say it's instead of permanent supportive housing, and you can notice this field disappeared. So that's some of the smart logic in here. So, as Elizabeth already mentioned, the form will come pre-populated with data from HMIS and entered by the HMIS help desk team. Let me scroll back in. The asterisks by each of the fields indicate that those are required fields, and there's text by each field to explain that field and provide the data collection requirements for the field. So you can use that as you go through the form to understand what is in each field. So each major section, like the project information section and the current inventory, has an area that will indicate if there are any errors on the form. So I'm just going to scroll down in the bottom of that section, and you can see right here in blue, there's a statement that says to please resolve the following issues before continuing. If the section below is blank, there are no errors. So this will appear, text will appear if there are any errors. And so you can see that we have an error. This form has been designed with some errors to help understand where to look for the errors and then how to correct them. So in this case, the error was, excuse me, was that only eligible project types for COC funding are permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, and transitional housing, and to correct the project type or remove the funding source. Well, in this case, my project type is good, but my funding source was incorrect, so I'm just going to change the funding source to eliminate the problem. And so these are all the fields that Elizabeth discussed: the target population, the bed type, excuse me. And I did want to go down and point out again the location. So the zip code and the geocode must match. And the zip code should reflect the location of the project's principal site, or the location in which the majority of the project's clients are housed, so where the majority of the beds and units are located. So this is kind of important information. Um, there are some projects we know that are initially set up and the location is not known. So sometimes an agency will fill in the main location, which is fine. If this information can be updated, the location is known for this project, then you can complete it, and just make sure that down at the bottom where you can provide notes about what was changed, that you indicate that that was changed and why. So the next section, again, is current bed inventory. And this appears because we have current bed inventory. And as Elizabeth pointed out, it's households with at least one adult and one child, without children, and with only children. So it's by household type. In this particular case, we have a households without children, but if I had inventory added that was for families, I could put in the number of beds, and that would immediately bring up some additional fields that I would have to provide. So I would need to provide the units, a start date, if there were any overflow beds, and also if there were any dedicated beds. The dedicated beds must equal the total number of beds here. So I'm just going to limit that. If you don't, no, sorry. If you don't have that, if you don't have any of this household type, then, excuse me, um, go ahead and put a 0 because it is a required field and you'll get an error if you don't. So in this case, we have households without children, and I'm going to make a change here just to indicate that there is the smart logic. And if I go down to the bottom where the errors would be, and it does tell me that the veteran beds for households without children can't be greater than the year-round, and then I would go back up and change that. Okay. And then down, this is the PIC count section. So these are the active clients in the project on the night of the HIC pit. And this data is directly from HMIS for projects that participate in HMIS. This is the bed utilization section. If this number were below 65% or above 105%, a text box would appear that would ask you to provide an explanation for the over or under utilization. And then finally, down at the bottom here is the submission section. So this is the area where you would indicate if any information was changed, such as we discussed the location of the project, or any other information. If it's been changed, let us know about that. And then also, if the project should be excluded because, for example, it had recently closed, you would indicate that here. And then provide any additional comments if you wish in this text box. And then you come down to the bottom. If you're not quite finished with the form, go ahead and put in your email address and click save, and you'll get a link in an email to go back to this form. If you are finished, go ahead and you click this box, email, and then another box is going to pop up that says submit to the help desk. So that's what we have for that. I'm going to stop share. Are there any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself or add your question to the chat. Okay, I don't see any questions. I'm gonna stop share.
Thank you, Heather. Yeah, we don't have any questions about the form, but we did have a question about reports and just wanted to note that we will cover additional helpful HICPIT reports in the upcoming slide, but wanted to note that we do have the agency setup form, or sorry, the agency setup dashboard for each agency to review your project descriptor and funding and inventory data. Can you confirm that you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Thank you. And we'll pass it over to Andrew.
Hey everyone. In these next few slides, we'll be going over some additional forms that agencies need to submit if they have projects that are not in HMIS. So these are going to be submitted in addition to the form that we just did the demo on. And the first of these is the HIC client form. And this only needs to be submitted if you have any permanent housing projects outside of HMIS. And for these projects, we'll be providing a template spreadsheet that you would need to fill out for each of your PH projects that are not in HMIS. And the HIC client form spreadsheet should include a row for every client that is active in the project. And on the template spreadsheet, there will also be some sample data as well as some comments with descriptions for each of the columns. And the reason that we are asking for you to submit this form is that we need this form to compare it to the PIT data entered on the HIC form for accuracy. So we're not going to be reporting on the data entered on the HIC client form. We just need it to verify the numbers for when we submit the HIC PIT. And this is a screenshot of what the spreadsheet is going to look like. So we're going to be providing this to you, and you need to fill it out if you have any projects, permanent housing projects that are not in HMIS. We also made it so that if you hover over any of the headers on the columns, it'll provide you a short description of what they are and some guidance on what needs to be filled out for each of these columns. And the next form that you might need to submit is also the PIT answer form. So this is a form that should be submitted if you have any emergency shelter or transitional housing projects that are not participating in HMIS. And it's similar to the HIC client form, where we'll be providing you a template, and you should be submitting a spreadsheet for each of your ES or TH projects, not in HMIS. And each of the rows should be for a separate client. And it will also include some comments with descriptions of every column and some sample data as well. And yeah, similar to the HIC client form, we're not going to publish this data in any form. We combine all the project data in the COC and then just submit the aggregated count to HUD. And this is the screenshot of what the spreadsheet looks like. So it looks quite similar to the other HIC client form. There's some sample data, and if you hover over the headers of each column, it will tell you some more information about the column and some guidance on what to enter. And then this is also a screenshot of some of the additional columns that are on the PIT answer form. And then one of the things we wanted to note was the household information column, because we had some questions about this last time we did the HIC PIT. So the household ID column is column L of the PIT answer form, and it's for identifying members of the same household. So if you're filling out this form, we want you to indicate members of the same household by filling out this column. And you can see in the example that we show, the first two rows are in the same household. So you would just need to put A for the group number just to indicate that they are in the same household. And for each additional household, you would just go down the alphabet. So for the second household, you could put B and then include any rows for the household members, also fill them out with B for the group ID, and then just go down the alphabet. And then in these next few slides, we'll be going over some reports that are available to run for filling out the HICPIT forms. So for the form that Heather provided a demo for, we encourage you to run some reports to verify the data as well as fill out the form if you need to make any changes to it. So these reports are available in HMIS under Reports, Data Analysis, Orange County Clarity System Reports, and then there's a section for HICPIT. So the main one that we want to cover and encourage you to run is the 2025 HIC and Sheltered Pit Data Dashboard. This is available on the Data Analysis tab under HICPIT, and it includes both aggregate and client level data for projects in HMIS. So the report will include several different tables, and the tables labeled active clients will show aggregate data, while the tables labeled client details will show client level data. And then this is a screenshot of what the report looks like in HMIS. So as you can see, it's a dashboard with a bunch of different tables, and you can filter it down to agency name and project name. The active client tables on the left side include aggregate data by household for each project, and that should be used for completing the PIT count section of the HIC form. And then the reports on the right side will be populated with client level data. So there's going to be like a row for each client. And that's just good to review, but you usually shouldn't be using that to like fill out any of the forms. And then there's also going to be additional tables based on the project types that you might have. So not every table is going to be populated with data. But so for example, there's the T like transitional housing and emergency shelter entry exit active clients. These will only, pictured on the top left of the table, this will only be populated if you have a project that falls under this category. And you want to make sure that this table includes all the clients that you have active in your transitional housing or emergency shelter project on the night of the pit, because if there are missing clients who should be considered active, you want to make sure that you want to go into HMIS and make sure that you change their enrollment data so that they appear under this table. And then so the next slide is for our rapid rehousing and permanent housing active clients. So this is similar to the emergency shelter active clients report. These will include clients who are active in your permanent housing project and placed in permanent housing on the night of the pit. So if there's clients missing from these reports who should be considered active and housed in the night of the HIC, you want to go into HMIS, review the enrollments, and make sure that they're active on the nights of the HIC, which is January 27th. And you also want to make sure that their housing move-in date is January 27th or earlier. And then we also have tables for SSVF, EHA active clients. So this is only going to be populated with data if you have an SSVF rapid rehousing project. And similar to the other tables, you just want to review the data, make sure that all the active clients are appearing under these tables. And if they're not, that indicates that you should be going into HMIS and making changes to the enrollment because we have to make sure that the HIC data that we're submitting on the form matches what's populating in these reports. And then this is an example of sort of how you should be matching the data from the report to the HIC form. So like we shared previously, the HIC form is going to be populated with the draft data, so it should be filled out. But if you need to make any changes, you should be running those active client reports that from the HIC and sheltered pit data dashboard, and then matching the data up to the reports. So as you can see, we have the emergency shelter entry exit active clients reports pulled up, and we just want to make sure that the numbers on the report matches up with the HIC form that we're submitting. And then for rapid rehousing, it's slightly different. So in the last slide, we were going over emergency shelter projects, and you would match the counts to the pit count. But for rapid rehousing, you want to match the active client table to the current inventory section. So if you're completing the form for a rapid rehousing project, please make sure that you're matching the table to the correct section. We want the active clients to match the current inventory section on the HIC form. And then for the other tables, if you have any of these projects active, we need you to submit the reports in a CSV format to your Dropbox. So if you have emergency shelter, entry exit projects, or transitional housing projects, you should be submitting a spreadsheet to your Dropbox for that. And we'll be providing you some of the draft data. So if it is all good, you shouldn't need to submit another spreadsheet. But if you do need to make changes in HMIS, then you need to download the data from HMIS and then upload to Dropbox. And then we can also support with that as well if you have any questions or need the reports run. And then we got a question from asking if we should match the active RRH to the bed inventory. So for the rapid rehousing projects, you want to match the active clients to the bed inventory table on the HIC form. And it sounds a little unintuitive, but the reason for that is because HUD determines that all RRH projects should have 100% utilization. So the inventory that we're using is just based on how many active clients are in the project. So if you have 18 active clients in your RRH project and they're all of the same household, you want to make sure that your beds for that household type is 18. So the clients who are enrolled in RRH but are not like necessarily housed yet, I believe that they would still be part of the inventory. So we're basing it off of the enrollment in HMIS. If they're being served by your rapid rehousing project, then they will count as the inventory for the rapid rehousing project.
Thank you, Andrew. I think there's a few more questions and just wanted to clarify for rapid rehousing, we're gonna wanted to review the slide over to note that rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and other housing clients enrolled in the project, their project start date need to be um, before or on the night of the HIC pit, which is January 27th, 2025 of this year, and their project date needs to be blank or after that date. And the client would be counted um, in the pit if their head of household has a move-in date on the night or before that pit date. The question is asking, so we're only counting house rapid rehousing clients. Yes, it would only be clients in rapid rehousing that has a move-in date. And for our partners that has SVF funding, if the participant receives services to stay in a shelter, they would be counted under the emergency shelter. So if they are currently enrolled in rapid housing, but on the night of the pit receive services to stay at a shelter or a motel, they would be counted under emergency shelter. Sorry, bear with me. I'm trying to find that slide with the additional guidance for SSVF. Thank you for your question. Our team will be working with each agency. So as we're working with your agency to review your HIC and PIT data, feel free to submit questions and let us know if there's any questions about the form or how data is being pulled and reported on. We're more than happy to further discuss. And if needed, we are available to set up Zoom calls with agencies to further review your agency data. Thank you, Andrew. We're going to pass it over to Linda to share additional helpful reports that we have available in Clarity.
Okay, so the HMIS team also wanted to share some additional helpful reports that would aid your agency during this year's HIC and shelter pit review. So since HUD is requiring final bed inventories to be updated in HMIS prior to the HIC and pit submission, you can use the agency setup review dashboard to review your bed inventory, your project's funding sources, and also the program descriptor data to ensure that your data is accurate and up to date. To access this report, you go onto your Launchpad, click on Reports, go to the Data Analysis tab, expand the Orange County Clarity System reports to locate the Agency Setup Review dashboard under Agency Management section. So the HMIS team has sent agency setup information, which includes the program descriptor data, funding, and also bed inventory to both HMIS participating and comparable database agencies to review. So if you haven't already, please confirm your agency's data. Changes have been requested to be submitted ASAP, just so that the HIC drafted HIC form will reflect those updates. So this section of the report has various data elements such as the location of your agency's program, project type, and operating start date. It is recommended that your agency examines the following data elements regarding your program. So some of the data points that I wanted to highlight is the operating start date. This is the first day on which the project provides or will provide services or housing. Project type code, this is based on the lodging or service that your agency is providing. The geocode. So this is associated with the geographic location of the project's principal site. And then also the housing type. This is based on the type of housing that is being provided, such as single site, clustered, multiple sites, or scattered site. Okay, so in this section, you'll see data about your bed inventory, such as household types. So this is the type of household being served by beds and units at project entry. Projects that serve more than one household type must have separate records of inventory for each household type. And then also bed inventory can change throughout the year, so it is important to update your bed inventory as needed. So this section of the report has various data elements regarding your funding source for your agency's program. There can be multiple funding sources for a program, so it is important to keep the funding source end date and the grant end date in mind so that you can submit new funding when your funding sources expire. As your agency is reviewing the reports, if you notice that there is missing funding source, that means that there is no funding source or that your funding source has been expired. So agency admins will have to respond to the HMIS help desk and provide an updated funding source. So as Heather mentioned before, there are some cases where an agency does not have a set numbers of beds that are available for each unit because the unit can be configured to accommodate different family sizes. And so in these cases, agencies can use the average size report for the families in their project in order to determine the number of beds for households with children that she reported on the HIC form. So once the report runs, it should look similar to the image below. So a description for each column, program's full name. This is a name of the project in HMIS and also reflected on the HIC form. Number of clients. This is the number of clients and households with children active in the project in the previous year. Count of households. This is the number of households with children active in the project for the previous year. And then average family size, this is the number of clients divided by the number of households active in the previous year. Another report is the number of enrollments in household in a given week. So this report is for rapid rehousing projects, and this is to determine the project's maximum capacity. So you will run the report for one of the projects in the previous year and find the week during the year when the project has the most active enrollments. Then you would run the county by persons by households type report for a date during that week to determine the project's maximum capacity. So the documents needed for submission are slightly different depending on whether your project is participating in HMIS or not. So in addition to the HIC form, if your project is participating in HMIS, then you also need the client details report for emergency shelter and transitional housing projects. If your project is not participating in HMIS, then you will also need the PIT answer form for emergency shelter or transitional housing projects, or the HIC client form for permanent supportive housing, other permanent supportive housing, or rapid housing projects. So the details report, pay answer forms, and client forms must be submitted to the agency's Dropbox. And once that has been completed, you should submit a ticket to the help desk to confirm that those documents have been submitted. So some of the action items for this year's process, please do run the agency setup dashboard to review your data for accuracy. And if there are any discrepancies or missing information, you will need to complete data entry and also clean up the data in HMIS. Also, we'll be setting up new agencies and projects as needed if you are participating in HMIS. Also update the funding source and bed inventory as needed, and also close out any projects that are no longer active. So here are some additional resources on this year's HIC and PIT process. Just an overview of this year's HIC and PIT process. Additional information on how to fill out the HIC form, the HIC client form, and also the PIT answer form. There's also step-by-step instructions on how to run the average family size report if your agency needs a tool to determine the number of beds for your projects. We will be sending out reports through your Dropbox folder. So if you do not have access, please reach out and let us know. Any other questions, feel free to contact us through the help desk.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you, team. For those who join us a little bit later in the training, please enter your agency name in the chat so that we can take attendance. Just a friendly reminder, we will be hosting office hours. This will be a couple days after we send out the draft HIC form, and those who participate in HMS will also be sending over the PIT draft data for your agency to review. We'll be reaching out, submitting a ticket through our Happy Fox ticketing system. So please keep an eye out for those updates so you can review your data and make updates as needed. And please do prepare questions to come to office hours. We're here to help you through this process. So if you have any questions, please join us for office hours or feel free to submit help desk tickets. We do have our team will stay on for a couple minutes if there's any questions. Feel free to unmute yourself or add your questions to the chat. And wanted to also note all of our training materials will be recorded and saved and be available on in the knowledge base article and in a recap email as well. I don't believe I see any questions coming in. Just want to thank you all for your time today. We look forward to working with you during this year's HIC and PIT. Again, please feel free to reach out to the HMS Help Desk if you have any questions. Thank you for your time and have a great day.